That's my mic, and my mic is live. And that's my face, and my face is live. I'm going to make your guys' mics as live as well because I always forget because I'm just a dope. Welcome to Art of Rock. Every Saturday morning, we do this crazy thing here. First and foremost, and I don't do this enough, I want to thank the Tongva people, the indigenous people of Los Angeles, for surviving. Seriously, you're awesome, and I acknowledge that I am on your ground right now. This is Art of Rock. We do this every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. LA time. Why? That's why there is no West Coast representation. And about noon over in New York, and it's about 5 o'clock in Berlin, I think. Is it 5 o'clock in Berlin, Alex?
6.
It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to update my thingy right now. 6 o'clock. This is made it's possible with ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. It's there. So many of these people are on ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. If you got a couple of bucks a month you want to throw my way, I would really be grateful for it. ANGELSPIT'S new track is called This Game Is Stupid. It is off the new album called The Star. It is the Bastard Gods, but I can't say this. I can't say that because fuck the algorithm. I can say that though. And it's bloody awesome, and it kickstarts probably this week. Wow, we should talk about setting up a Kickstarter. Not, please. And also new Ice Planet 9000 track called The Last Transmission, and I'm very proud of it. It's very awesome. Once we're done here, we're gonna... Oh, hey! And if you need more music, speaking of Spotify, the Industrial Incisions playlist. It's a whole bunch of classic industrial music plus old school plus some new industrial tracks. Like it, follow it, subscribe to it, because it's amazing. After we're done here, we're going to zoom on over, or raid on over, I should say, to MTV TV, because if you want to find your new favorite band, it's there. And if you've got a video clip and you want to find your new favorite audience, they are there. We are going to do it. It's fantastic. It's Art of Rock. Vince brought up a question before about how do you get people motivated? Do you want me to start on this? Okay, people are either motivated to help you or they're not. People are either motivated to help themselves or they are not. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know that saying? My advice is if somebody's not motivated, it's okay. Don't take it personally. They probably have other things, pressing things on. One of those things might be relaxing from a horrifyingly stressful life. The thing that you want help with or you want them to be involved with, even if it is their project, may not be a higher priority as it is to you. So when they're ready, they'll come back to you. Unfortunately, by that stage, your window of opportunity may have moved. I personally can only be involved with people who are motivated and yeah. Otherwise, we're not going to get along very well because... You gotta go. You gotta do this. You gotta do this. That's my thoughts. Does anybody else want to throw in anything short? Razzie, please.
Yeah, building in a little bit of flexibility to your project. Obviously, I think everybody does this, but sometimes that flexibility has to be whether or not to use the thing that you thought was really important. Because if the person on the responsibility end is flaking, and it's for the reasons like Zook said that. You can't control that. You can only control your side of things. And if you've set out a really clear deadline, very clear expectations, managed your milestones and checkpoints on the way to the deadline, and they still flaked at the end, they got something else going on in their life, and you've got your deadlines to deal with, and it may require that little bit of flexibility that you built in about what to do on this contingency if you don't get a piece of an asset that you thought was crucial to the project.
Thanks, man. And also, as you go along, you're going to be meeting more people who are solid. And you're going to be meeting so many people who are not solid. And they're going to say, oh, man, yeah, I'm really solid. I can get this done. I'm such a good guitarist. Or I'm such a good this. Or I'm such a good that. And when it comes time for them to actually deliver, they let you down. Even when you pay them, they let you down. And yeah, man, the trick is don't lose a friend over it, and just go, hey man, it's cool, It's all right. I've done my bit. And what really fucking sucks is when you've invested time and energy into it and the whole thing is going to go flomp. That's what makes me so endlessly fucking mad. Was there anything else, or did we want to throw to Alex, who had a very interesting question? Maybe? Alex, hit me with... Vince, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was actually very helpful, because that gives me, like, I was stuck on doing things a certain way with this, and that gives me an idea maybe or another way to do it and make something else work. So that was actually very helpful. Thank
awesome. You. I hope you don't lose friends over it. Sincerely. Alex, so sorry I sort of stood on you then. Baby, talk to me.
Maybe to quickly say something about Vince's question, as someone who usually messes up dates and so on, it helps me to have a deadline where something has to be done until. But maybe you're not in the position to make that demand. But at least if I have to do something for somebody else as a favor, it helps me to get a deadline with it, so I can put it in a queue in my head. Anyway.
That's really excellent. Can I just say one more thing? Putting as much padding into that deadline as possible. I used to work for the most evil corporation in the world. Well, they're not anymore. Microsoft. And when we were developing software, we would say that the thing was make a time estimate, like make a really accurate time estimate. Multiply it by 3 and add an hour. And we always thought that the hour was a joke, but the hour saved your skin. Also, that's a funny thing about budgets as well, is that you're going to spend half of your budget in a project in the last 20% of the time. If it goes for a week, you'll spend that half the budget in the last day. You'll spend it at that last moment because shit gets frantic, someone drops the ball. Rezi, I see your hand. Did you want to talk more about this?
Yeah, if you don't mind a little bit more about project management on that angle. I've seen the checklists that you shared, Carl, and that other people put up, and usually it's just one list of everything to be done from the perspective of release an album, release a single. And I'm personally a little bit stuck right now on I've got my stuff segmented by what a label, me, does, what the band manager does, me, and what the musician does, me. And having put these tasks and calendar items into these categories, sometimes they're a little bit buried and hidden. And something like PR, is that a strictly label thing, or is it a collaboration between me as band manager and label perhaps? But I don't know. Somebody talk me down from either the hierarchy or talk me up into that the hierarchy can work and that there's a way to actually keep these tasks sorted so I'm not looking at everything all at once.
The trick is you have to decompartmentalize. And I find that those lists, it's interesting because when I did the rollout for the new album, I only did this the other day actually. I went through that whole list and I rewrote it because I've got all of these other factors in there that have changed stuff, and all stuff has changed and da-da-da. It's mostly still correct, but there's all this other stuff. I think that as far as PR and stuff goes, yes, it's predominantly the press crew that do that, but the initial thing about it is that management and artists are going to want to say, this is how we want to be represented. That really the band is supposed to write their bio and do a chunk of the press release. Like, you know how a good press release has got a little quote in it that Vince says that this is the coolest album he's ever worked on and it's just the bomb. And he might also talk a little bit about the background of it and something funny. Because obviously, as you know, the thing about a good press release is that it's a page of dialogue that if they only want to do one line on it, it's the first line. Boom. Stick it in there as a tweet. If they want to make a little paragraph of it, they take the first paragraph because it's all right exactly there. But if they want to turn it into like a puff piece or a kind of quasi interview, they can pull out quotes and stick it in there. You do all the work for them. That's what they want, because press people are super busy and half of them aren't getting paid for this. So you want to present them with everything. They don't need to think they can just copy and paste. That's what they want. So in answer to your original question, it's kind of the band that has to go, this is how we want to be represented. Then it's really the press hat that goes, okay, this is how we turn that into something that press people are going to see, and they're going to, it's translated into pressese, which is the language of the press.
Before you throw it to Vince, do you keep those tasks separately in any way, or do you actually note them down, or you just we've been doing this for so long that you kind of know what's next, and when you have to switch from band wrote the bio to PR now needs to get it to outlets?
Oh, actually, the way I do it is when I'm listening to the master, I might get an idea or a thought of the tracks, and that's where I start writing stuff down. When the masters come back, like that's the first time I actually hear the song. And I have a separate folder within the album. There will be the press folder, and there will also be the promo folder or the promo notepad. And I will put little tiny things in there that, I threw a water bottle down the stairs and it became the main rhythm for a track. I forgot all about that. I'll add that in there. And the thing about it is that whole press release also becomes your Kickstarter script. Also becomes part of the script, like that thing that you're not rewriting all of these things. You've just got this core chunk which might go for a page, and you just even half a page, they become tweets, they become all of this stuff. So the core of it, in answer to your question, comes when I'm sorry about the dogs, comes when you listen to the masters, or when I listen to the masters, because it's fresh ears. And then I have a template that moves everything into it. And then I'll move stuff out of there as well. And what's going to happen is that there are going to be several scripts going on. Like the Kickstarter script's going to be slightly different, but that's in the Kickstarter folder in a text file called Kickstarter script. And then there's also the stuff that's on the page of the Kickstarter, which is different again, which is a different text file called Kickstarter page blurb. Then there's the promo blurbs that have got all the tweets and everything else in them. I'm sorry, you guys are falling asleep right now. Another really good thing to use is ChatGPT. Besides it helping you find extraterrestrial life and creating a faster than light engine and going back through SETI's things, finding the planets that may have actually be sending radio transmissions and a whole bunch of other cool shit, ChatGPT will be able to give you awesome press releases with hashtags. Try it if you haven't. It's a great tool. It's there. You're not hurting anyone. And I know Ivan wants to talk about this, but just use it. Because I suck at press releases. You probably suck at press releases. But it's really good at looking at a press release that already exists online. And if you want to say in the style of ANGELSPIT, in the style of Nine Inch Nails, in the style of Hey Job, whatever, utilize the tools. It's going to save you from ripping your hair out. I'm going to throw it back to you, Rezzy.
ChatGPT wrote my last Spotify editorial playlist pitch for the next single, so it's legit. It actually did a good job in this case. Gave me something to work with. So the thing that you're saying is your project is per album. Your everything exists within that album. Once you're done being the musician, you automatically switch to I'm not the musician anymore. Now this folder becomes handing the musician folder of stuff over to the band manager.
Yeah.
And you start with the hierarchy of the songs that are in there, and your organization is the folders of Kickstarter and Patreon and stuff like that. I haven't been doing that. My recording folder was just the recording stuff. Remixes get in it, that kind of thing, but it was none of the PR docs and shit were in the album folder. I like it.
Yeah,
I
well,
can
album,
go
and
with
then
it.
there's a subfolder which is music, and then there's a subfolder called demos, and a subfolder called unmastered, and a subfolder called mastered. There's another one on the root directory of the album called lyrics. And this sounds like fucking shit, but trust me, this So where I am right now, and Diana, it's so good to see you, by the way. Where I am right now is I've finished the music. Music's done, almost done. I'm waiting on one more track to come back from mastering. I'm waiting for the vinyl version to be mastered, but basically we're done. Now I've gone into Kickstarter mode, and I've also gone into graphic design mode, because the first thing Kickstarter is going to say is, what does this look like? What are the concepts and everything else behind this album? And then, because with the vinyl, I'm sorry, I'll be quick, N is sending me the final. I don't have the final artwork yet. I'm getting that in about 2 weeks, although the Kickstarter is going to launch next week. So this Kickstarter is launching without the album artwork, which is kind of good, because in 2 weeks' time, I can give a bump and say, hey, check out the artwork. So now the banners are all the temporary logo of the album, because every AngelSpit album's got a logo, which you can tattoo to yourself. Then in 2 weeks' time, it's going to be the cover. So and hey, so this is what the T-shirt's going to look like. This is what the album's da. When N gets me that album, when N gets me that album cover, I will have 4 days to turn that into vinyl and get that off to vinyl so it can be back for November. So I'm in graphic design mode. I'm starting the press push. As soon as the Kickstarter goes live, I have to do a huge push to every single contact AngelSpit has, every single one, and be slamming social media and be doing ads. So then I also, it's now graphics and PR. And then once that's pushed and the Kickstarter is done, I push it to Bandcamp, so it's still marketing and PR, but then it goes into manufacture. In fact, as soon as the Kickstarter ends, it goes manufacture, although I'm already designing the manufacturer, graphic design and all that stuff now. Bands are fun. Vince, talk to me. Oh, you're muted, baby.
Yes, I was muted. Okay, I fixed it. This is interesting to me because it's something that I've recently had to really think about a little bit more for myself with starting the Patreon and trying to do behind the scenes things. I've got to figure out how to present that. And so like figuring out how I organize it is how I have to figure out how to present it, because you can't start from where you're not there yet. You know what I mean? So I can't get ahead of myself in that department. I tend to do things a little differently though, because I start with a visual, and I tend to base my entire concept for what I want the music to be after I've got a visual and a title for an album. But I don't work with anything more than the title from the beginning, and then I title tracks from there as I produce them. Right. So I have to wear a lot of hats at once, but it works out because of my ADD. So like it keeps my brain occupied enough that I'm not driving myself crazy because I'm driving myself crazy. That's but I think it might help to have a spreadsheet with your schedule for these things, because some of it's going to overlap, and like I'm not good at making one, so I'm not offering to do so by any means, but like figure out like part of your time you're going to have to be doing producer and musician mode, and then also there's going to be some overlap there between that and the promotion, especially if you keep your schedule flexible and you've got things you need to wait on or things you need to find time for in between, because life happens. So like I'm thinking maybe a spreadsheet with your scheduling for your various jobs for yourself, as well as the schedule for the release itself.
Yeah, truth, man, truth. There is an example of schedules and stuff, which I can actually. I'm gonna stick that in the everywhere so everyone have a look at it. Resi, I'm gonna throw that to you now. Shit might skip a little bit right now. I apologize. Resi, floor is yours.
On the subject of scheduling visually on a spreadsheet, this will be the third album cycle that I've scheduled out on a Gantt chart. So the whole thing is horizontal. The contingencies and dependencies are all shown, and that sort of helps me pace out. I say sort of because being good at using charts and calendars and stuff is like practice and skill, and some people's neurology just doesn't support doing that. But one of my shortcuts or tricks or helps or things that gets me to be able to visualize when things happen is just having it horizontal and scrollable. So milestone would be the release date, and projects within it would be, you know, masters are back, mix is done, songs are written, things like that. But categorization has been the biggest challenge, and I'm going to sort of go with the one big category kind of idea now that y'all have mentioned doing that.
Cool. Vince, I'm sorry, man. I can't. My computer is just going, nope. I can't access anything right now. But there is a spreadsheet, and I will make that public. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't.
The release schedule spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
open
I
any window on my computer right now. It's just going, nope, can't handle it.
I have that.
Okay, cool.
I was referring to Raby Raz making one for himself that specifically broke down the different jobs he has as this piece of the job and this piece of the job, so that where things overlap is visual.
Yes, it's essential. I don't know if you've ever used, collectively you, but also Vincent, you specifically, a Gantt chart software, which there are a bunch of them. The one that I use is called Merlin, but it puts the duration of every project and the things that are connected to it with little lines. And if you do operate visually, it's spreadsheets to me have been trouble looking at a flat hierarchy of just all the stuff. It's particularly difficult for me to make sense in groups and determine which things are related to what on a flat list of text, whereas a picture of a bar that's labeled release the album, sometimes I can recognize what's supposed to happen when very easily with that. But you have to do it, it's work.
Yeah, and the good thing about Gantt charts is that they'll tell you when that ain't going to happen until this has happened. Like, you can't do a press release until you've written a press, you can't release it to the press until you've written a press release. You can't release your album until it's done. And 1,000 times, add time all the time. Like with this Kickstarter, I've added a month. I've added a month to everything, and I'm telling you, it's still going to be late. Just cause vinyl, just cause XYZ, just cause it's going to rely on a whole bunch of things coming to my table, opening boxes, and then putting in orders and going. Because every single thing, in when somebody orders something that's got a whole bunch of stuff in it, every single thing has come from a different place. So, fun on that. And actually, something else I'm doing is I'm releasing the digital of the album is going to get released as soon as the digital's done. So yeah, that's a really good point, man. I love talking about this stuff. Does anybody else want to throw in, or does we want to throw to Alex and the dogs? Let's throw to Alex. Give me some wisdom, Alex.
So maybe to start from the beginning where it started for me with this idea is that I'm sort of struggling with the music, and I wonder why. And I think one of the reasons is that I want to achieve different things that are, in some cases, polar opposites. That's sort of the way I want to the kind of music I want to make. For example, I want to make like something like Aphex Twin, but also the Stooges in one project, and it's difficult to combine the things. And I realized in that there are like two approaches to industrial music. One is more like a rock band kind of approach, and the other one is kind of an electronic approach, like more like a techno set or something. And yeah, I found that really interesting, and now I wonder which one I should choose, or whether I should make one track in this approach, another track in this approach, and switch things up. And that's what I've been thinking about while showering.
can I jump in first? So, okay. Listen to the Beastie Boys. If you don't. Listen, because firstly, they are awesome. Secondly, it's really interesting that their approach to, and a lot of their layouts are really DJ-esque. Because they're kind of Detroit layouts of stuff. They're not rock and roll. Like, there's rock and roll elements, but they don't, they push on it. This is great, man. The marriage between, but it's really funny that rock and roll says, no, you're not allowed to go for another 8 bars, not even 64 bars, whereas electro goes, no, fuck it, man, I'm going for 64 bars on this. Rock and roll goes boom, 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 boom. It is actually really strict because you don't want to lose their interest, whereas electro is about, swimming in it. I'm going to throw this to Rezi. This is such a great conversation, man. Thank you. Rezi, go.
I think, and man, this is so up to, like, asking somebody else how to do your thing is like, I don't know, either asking for me to feel really bad about what I said or the wrong answer to get said. But I think that to get the rock and roll part of it in, you have to do form. You have to do the verse chorus form. Whereas to do the industrial side, you have to get the sounds. So I don't think that it matters leading up to the success. You can do all the experimental noise side stuff you want, where you're playing with samples and beat and intricate balances between synthesizers and stuff. And then on the rock and roll side, you're just getting this, like, does the verse propel into the chorus? Does the hook actually land when you want it to? Does it intro and outro in the right way? And not necessarily doing those things concurrently, but once you do, marrying them, you'll come up with your own Stooges meets SPK kind of moment and know it, I think. And if you don't recognize it, it's just like, okay, you got to do more of them. If you haven't done 15 of these and figured out which 5 of them are the best, there's a road to hoe. And interestingly, to wrap this up, the Trash Theory channel just put out a video, I think maybe yesterday, and it traced the origins of getting electronic experimental stuff into pop.
That was the reason why I resurfaced with that idea today.
Perfect. Did you watch
I
the
had
entire
that idea
video?
for a long time, but today I watched the video and that's how it came to my mind.
It's great. It's
Give me
great.
the link. Oh, please, link, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Keep going.
I think I said what I had in mind. So, you're up.
Oh my god. Okay. Booyah. So, I think another thing about industrial music and electronic music is the choice of chords. Usually, there's only one. And usually it's not even a chord, it's just a drone. Things in D. Or whatever. It's usually D, it's not E. Rock and roll's usually E or A. Fuck those chords. They got all those sharps in them. Ugh. We want flats, man. Industrial music goes to an L or C. Industrial music wants flats. So that's why C is very popular. But seriously, it's about the chords. It's about the drone. And when you listen to, and the really cool thing about that is, obviously, at the end of the song, the drone starts moving. It starts following the chords a bit more, and then that makes the song lift. But when things are just like pulsating in C, for example, you're setting up this ocean of amazingness. I think you need to be in a certain headspace to be able to do this, because the anxious head says, okay, we have to do something different now, I'm getting bored with this. Whereas when you're on the dance floor partying, shall we say, you become a lot more patient to the amount of time you will spend on a bass line going dung 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 dung. Bass lines like that can go for hours and hours and hours. So That's what I think. You know, and the funny thing about electronic music as well is that a change in electronic music means bringing in a hi-hat. After 8 bars, you don't go to the chorus, you bring in a hi-hat. So there's that. I also think and this is interesting as well, is that a band that really crossed the line so beautifully was The Prodigy. Do we use Prodigy in past tense now? Because The Prodigy, when you listen to it, it is electronic dance music without a question, but they're formulated pop songs. And just because fucking hell, it's brilliant. Prodigy. Yeah, it was really, 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 really clever. All right, great. Thank you. Prodigy's still going. Good. But, you know, listen to stuff like, I just say listen to the Chemical Brothers, listen to Moby's another one who crosses that boundary a lot as well. Listen to 808 State. Like, man, the old fucking early raver stuff was great because they would just drone with it. But it's funny, and you're starting to get into trance territory. I never hear that on the floor at a club. Never, never, never. It's interesting that, you know, I'll hear Prodigy sometimes. It's interesting. Actually, Ministry's So What? That's an interesting track because it goes for 8 minutes. And they sit on that verse for how long? Same with Just One Fix. Goes for hours. Like the album version. And they'll just sit on that verse and then they'll flip over to the chorus. Then they'll flip back to the verse for like 32, 64 bars. I'm really going nowhere on this. Razzie, the floor is yours.
Little quick exercise, Alex. If you haven't already done this, and just say so if you have, take the 2 bands that come to mind as fully successful in both of the extremes. Not the one that you think merged them, but the ones that have the electronic origin thing element that you really dig, and the one that has the rock and roll element, and then pull out the essence, the 3 things that you find to exemplify rock and roll in the rock one, and the 3 things that you find to exemplify as electronic in the electronic one, and just make sure you can write a fully finished track that hits those marks. And if that doesn't get you the win, then move on and do it again and repeat. But as an exercise, it could be super annoying. I mean, cool, fun, educational.
Alex, I see your hand up. Can I jump in, or do you want to jump in?
Maybe you and then I after you.
All right, because I do partly have a question. Something that I like to do is actually write down what's going on in the song, in the arrangement. Like, you write down 8 bars, strange noise ambience. 8 bars, kick drum and bass. Then 8 bars, the hi-hat comes in. Then the snare, the little 808 snare. What I'm saying right now is such early 90s rave music, by the way. Then the acid bass comes in or whatever. And actually count the bars and notate what's coming in. It's really interesting. And then when you see the main riff and the secondary riff come in, you know, maybe they don't even have a chorus. Write down what they're doing. If you like Aphex Twin, write down what Aphex Twin is doing, and then tell everyone else, because we don't know. Because that guy's crazy. Fantastic crazy. It's yours.
Aphex Twin is doing a lot often. Yeah, I think another reason why this came to my attention, or why I asked myself this question, is because I think for me that's the 2 main methods of infusing energy into a track. Because sometimes if it feels, it happens to me if I just write in my DAW and don't use any hardware, sometimes things just feel flat. And if I think what kind of music excites me, it's usually either things that have this electronic drive, like rave music, and the other one is like a very how do I say it? rock tracks with a certain flow. It's like a deep push. I think that's also why I said the Stooges, because what the track that reminds me most of it is Search and Destroy. Yeah, so it's usually about energy for me.
Do you write with an electric guitar?
No, I don't, because I'm not a very good guitarist, but I sometimes add like
That's more reason to write with an electric guitar. If you're Rezi's so agreeing with me. If you're awful at electric guitar, write with electric guitar, because you're going to make a whole bunch of mistakes that guitarists aren't going to make, and those mistakes might sound cool.
Use fewer strings, use an open tuning, use one finger, whatever you got to do, but get that tone and some sort of chugging on that thing.
Oh yeah, get that damn guitar and tune everything to either 1 or 5 all the way up, and just bash it like you don't care. One finger like this. Get rid of strings, whatever it is you got to do. You will write your best fucking material bouncing the riff off the open. Trust me. Trust us. We are your father, Luke. Does anybody else want to throw into this? It's a really interesting question. That's what's interesting about electronic music and like bleep bloop on a modular is how do you throw yourself into the I have no idea what I'm doing right now thing? Wow, that was cool. What did I just do then that was cool? Difficult thing about like modular synths though is that when something like that happens and you got a whole bunch of random generators, once it's gone, it's gone. But finding the musicality and writing them riffs, because what you're saying, Alex, when you say Stooges, that's riffs, that's riff rock. To be able to write a strong, awesome riff is really, really important. And that means guitar. Or possibly. And fucking play the guitar yourself. Just, come on, man. You got nothing to lose. So you can get a guitar for $50, and the more shit it is, the better.
Good thing I have 2 shit guitars.
Awesome! Yeah, do something fun with the tuning. That's what Sonic Youth do. Something crazy with the tuning, and wow, what happened there? Gee, I don't know. That was cool, though. Fuck with them beats. Karma. I have nothing else, but I'm going to throw it to Vince.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody already said this because I had to run out of here for a second. But when you're writing especially if you're making electronic music, regardless of what you're trying to get into it influence-wise and like make it sound like, throw the theory out the window to start with. You're making electronic music. Like, if it sounds good, it is good. It doesn't matter if the theory applies or not. So, like, if you've got the bounce you're looking for from this, and you've got the grind you're looking for from that, as long as it sounds good, don't worry about what the notes are, even as long as it sounds good.
Yeah,
that's how I tend to approach everything in the end. Like, I'll start out with a little bit of theory, but then eventually I decide I don't care anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really, sorry, Vince, I don't mean to, can I jump in or you keep, all right. That's a really important thing about the human brain and the way that it just, what is it? It is a chaos engine that makes sense out of chaos and chaos out of sense. So I don't know, but that's what music is, and that's like, man, this is the fun thing about a guitar is that if you play it on a synth, it's burp 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 burp. If you play it on a guitar, it's wow 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 chung 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 wow. You know, You can get in there and fuck shit up because that is mission critical in rock and roll. Everything you just spoke about was the attitude and the, man, if you've got the attitude in your mind, you can make Mary Had a Little Lamb sound like destruction. And it's in time you learn how to make, program synths to do that, because it ain't easy. Just making that fabric fall apart. That's what you got to do. Yeah, there you go. Does anybody... It's great because someone's now drilling in the background here. I don't know if you can hear that. It's very industrial.
I was going to cite Neubauten right then, too, so that works.
You mean the drilling or the fact that Neubauten's amazingness?
Mostly the drilling, but in context of, Vince, what you were saying about throw theory away, I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to put theory first rather than using it as a language to explain to somebody else what they just did. And that can be an obstacle, for sure. But one thing that I think it comes down to a successful song, if your plan includes having people respond to it by wanting to listen to it again and again and share it with friends and that kind of part of the experience, there is a expectations and surprises kind of balance that you need to strike, and some of that does frame hang around not just arbitrarily throwing notes at it, which is a different way of saying if it sounds good, it is good, but there are some goal states in culture to hit in that sounds good definition, which it's helpful to hit. And I don't know, I think I'm using a lot of words to saying, like, sometimes it does help to play into it and play on in a key and stuff like that, and subvert the expectations of that key by putting in surprise notes skillfully and with practice. Because even a very abstract Neubauten song does have a structure, and sometimes their noisiest ones, the structures are a little bit harder to detect. But when that scrape comes in at the right time and then subsides and returns, and the spring that Unruh is hitting is a new texture that comes in, it's got an arc, it's got a composition, it's got intention, and it meets either haphazardly or because they meant to do it that way certain universal signifiers that we like to hear. And I think it's a human thing. I think it's related to the state of language and being human and stuff like that. So long way around, but
I think you're just kind of saying also what I said, but better.
Yeah,
I do agree. Yes,
maybe
agreeing.
Maybe I don't necessarily mean literally just ignore theory entirely. Like, intention is important, and you'll get that across. But that's like part of the idea. Like, if
I took your meaning correctly then, just so you know, and I just wanted to add that in case anybody misconstrues it for needing to know theory or ignoring theory, those aren't really the extremes. It's more putting your song in ear first, like you said. The end.
Also, I'm going to
make it all sound like.
Thank you. I'm going to throw into the list, obviously, Neubauten. As far as a band, you want to get their tracks and break down what the hell they're doing, because it's very interesting. And also Shore SBK and Shore Throbbing Gristle. Listen to their tracks and make a list of, in this 8 bars they did this, then they did this, but it went for 12 bars. Write that shit down, figure it out. And the fun thing about industrial music is that it is a child of experimental music. So build an instrument. I think for every fucking album you do, build even if it's a box that's got a peg on it, that's fucking something. Make something ethereal that is going to create weird sound that a synthesizer can't make, and sound that you're not going to find in a library, something that is distinctively yours. Alex, your hand is still up, and I'm going to throw it back to you now.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, for me, it's like I try to put in what I either hear in my head and use theory as a tool set to fix problems. And the other way I work is to just mash 3 random notes into the sequencer and then try to add notes that make them fit together. That's the other approach.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever like sit down with a guitar on your lap and just bash that thing?
I did that a lot when I was 16, but nowadays I feel like I don't. If I play guitar, I tend to fall into so many cliches from metal that I don't like that I fall into these cliches.
Okay, and those cliches
it's
happen.
like-
Go ahead.
It's like either Christian Death is the one band that sounds a lot like what I doodle, and the other one is Black Sabbath but in bad,
Okay.
like maybe a bad Black Sabbath cover band.
Okay. Black Sabbath, great riffs.
Yeah.
that's- So I'm going to make a suggestion. Grab one of your guitars. Somebody mentioned, I don't remember who it was. Take some strings off it. Tune everything either to the same note. Thanks, Razzie. Tune everything to the same note, or tune them to fifths, or flat fives. Do something different. Because if you're going back to habits, it's because the instrument you're on, you are familiar with it. Make the instrument something that you're not familiar with. And in fact, while you're taking strings off, get some rings and stuff, like, rings or little tiny springs, wrap them around the strings. So you start getting something prepared. So that when you play it, they're going to rattle or something. Might work, might not work. Always fuck with shit. That's my advice. Your hand is still up, so I'm going to throw it back to you.
The love
that
of all
was a
is...
mistake.
Oh, sorry. I thought you...
Oh, so
Yeah,
I'm
I-
throwing it back to Alex. He's sorry, Resi.
His hand's still up.
Oh no, his hand's going.
I was
Okay,
going to say
to Resi.
how
Go.
important it is to write down your tuning and string removal and stuff on the track that you recorded it on for later observation. Oh my God, the hours I've spent trying to reverse engineer how I played certain things, and it was just the B string wasn't tuned in the fourths or whatever. It was all straight across. The other thing I wanted to mention is a fun exercise for me has been to just throw a track down on the DAW timeline and then make a song on top of it. I think I've maybe mentioned that before, but whether you're just stealing the form or actually doing it chord for chord and just making your own changes in idle time, just as another way of getting inside a song and understanding how it came together. Not really a cover, but just a reuse.
That's actually brilliant. That's a great piece of advice, man. Like, get that Stooges or Sabbath song, get that riff that you like, turn it into electro track, then put your own riff over it and pull out the Stooges, or whoever. That's a really, really good writing thing to do. Is that if your energy isn't hitting something, fucking Rage Against the Machine or something that where the energy is slamming, then once you're there with it, pull it out. Yeah. And Prodigy drums forever. Does anybody else want to jump in on this? Because I do love this topic. What? Nothing? Yeah, nothing. Okay. Well, shit. Let's talk about something else.
Does anybody else have anything anecdotes about Einstürzen und Neubauten to add? Because we could talk about their influences and skills for months, but...
So, I remember when they came to Australia for the first time, like, no one had heard of this band, obviously. Well, all the goths had. But they did a press release, and they invited press along because they landed in Brisbane, and their first stop was a junkyard where they built their instruments. And they spent like a month or something hanging out in Queensland and building their instruments. And that was their press release. And the press fucking loved it. And their tour was huge because everybody had to go and see this weird noise band that built instruments out of like Australian industrial rubbish. And they were fucking mad. Really, really, really brilliantly clever music. Brilliantly fucking clever music. Anyway, yeah. And I just got the house. What's the peeing horse one?
Austerluga.
That's it. And it's really interesting. Great.
One of my all-time favorite albums.
Yeah, it's really good art too. I love that art. They're using my favorite red. And just the use of all the colors on that are just really stunning. Great fucking artwork. But yeah, Alex, go.
Yeah, I can give thousands of anecdotes. For example, that they started out with using scrap metal because their drummer couldn't afford, or the drummer had to sell his drum kit, and so that was more a patch. Oh, sorry. Maybe someone else continue.
I like them.
That was it? Yeah, Rezzy, your hands up, baby, go. God damn it. Am I muted?
I don't know. I don't really have any other stories. They're just like sort of intense. I mean, you get what they're about from the beginning, but they also embody that sort of progression from much more vague experimentalism into rock form through the career. Like if you listen to the stuff, I mean, Fuerte Mein Ego's got a structure and a form, but then like the stuff on Richter Scala is much more ambient and evolving. But then by the time you get to Haus der Lüge, it's like they're rock songs, and like Feurio is like just a dance floor rock pop mess of metal hit. And I don't know what we used to cover Haus der Lüge, and I remember trying to not just sample the things that were already in their track and like figuring out what one of just one of those little elements in there that's in their repeating loop was. And I got a couple of pieces of 2x4 and a microphone. I was like, clink, no, and then throwing them together so they hit just perfectly, had the right resonance and the size of these pieces of 2x4. It's like, that is the sound. And it's like, there's so much inspiration in there. Really, just, that's my story.
And that's a good story. Thank you so much. Alex, are you feeling better?
Yeah, I hope so. So at least according to Blixer, their sort of frontman, they don't consider themselves an industrial band, but rather a rock band who has just used unusual instruments. And the biggest influences were like krautrock bands like Neu. And also during the demonstrations, they used to bang against the barricades from the police in rhythms and sing their protest slogans. And that's sort of where their rhythm came in, from this making noise during protests. Also quite interesting.
So this is brilliant because here is a whole bunch of exciting creativity to making music that isn't sitting in front of a computer screen with your finger doing this. This involves banging things, shouting, and throwing things. And I think that is what industrial music is about. Sure, good term, bad term, I don't fucking care. Call it whatever you want. It's about being a 15-year-old who's doing something naughty and you don't know what it is and you don't know where it's going to go, but fuck it, this is fun, and wow, that sounds cool. That is what has attracted me to this genre and what attracts me to keep doing music in this genre, because this is the only genre that will let you get away with that crazy shit. So therefore, I think it's very important that you exploit that and you have fun with that, because your audience wants to hear it. Sure, it can be a sample, but sample it yourself. Go on a safari, break things, and record them when they break. It's fun. Razzie, go.
Going to the junkyard and recording smashing metal is one of those uniting universals in the way, like we come back to Peter Gabriel with that, and of course to the Depeche Mode coming around. Like there's, okay, that's only two examples, but there's more on my mind that aren't quite at the ready. But isolating smashes and things and then turning them up in the studio and bringing them into this new environment where you control them. There's like, I don't know, it's a very powerful effect, and it's one of the most fun things you can go through in learning how to do stuff with sound.
Totally agreed. Alex, I want to go in after you. Floor is yours.
I think one thing that also really inspires me is the idea in industrial music that you use things for things they were not supposed for or meant for. You use scrap metal as percussion. Maybe you make sounds with a delay feedback. You sample wind, like stuff like that. That's really inspiring to me.
And shortwave radio and all that fun stuff. I will say it again, build an instrument. Because it's not just a percussive thing, but it's also about the pitch and tonalities. Like, sure, you might have your track that drones in C, and that's great. But then you have a piece of metal that you're plucking or something over the top, and it is creating a tone, kind of. But the tone isn't a clearly defined note. It's not a C or an F sharp or a whatever. It's just a note. And when you start pulling elements like that into it, and you're actually playing the thing, you're not sampling it, you're playing it. Samplers are great, but the fucker with the samplers, the first thing with a sampler I try and do anyway is to create sense of it. I try and tune the fucking sampler. And bashing a piece of metal and playing it on a sampler is great, is because it's got a harmonic in it, and that harmonic is not falling into the overtone blah 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 series, so you got something that sounds weird. That's great. Actually build a kit or an instrument and play it in the track and treat it like it's a musical thing. And then fucking distort it. Because the sounds you are going to get out of that shit, use the distortion that's a plug-in on your computer. Who gives a fuck? The sounds you are going to pull from when those harmonics of a tin can or a pot that you cook your dinner in or something, when that shit starts ringing and that eats into distortion, it's going to create something really pretty. Pretty from the perspective of somebody who's fucked in the head to an audience who is fucked in the head. And we love each other's fuckdom. Rezi, go.
I still haven't gone out and found a new portable field recorder that we talked about maybe a couple of months ago now, but I do intend to. And one of the other things to consider is getting multiple hits on your sample thing rather than just doing a one shot and bringing that into your sampler. The big difference between what you can get out of that inharmonicity that Carl was talking about in the overtone series of a piece of metal building up that thing, and bring something slightly softer like mallets, and just get those events so that there are multiple strikes and decays within the one sample in case you bring home something that then inspires a rhythm loop or a song or something. Man, I gotta go out.
Overwhelmingly agree. And it's a great way, if you're having trouble with your album or whatever, go on a sampling safari. Sonic safaris are awesome. You just go out there with either your phone, which is not really the best, but it's something, or one of these friggin' Zoom recorder things, which is in a plastic bag right now. You can get these for like $100, and now there's really cheap versions of these things that you can get for like $60, and they sound great. And you can record on those things at 96K 24-bit. I just use 4416, whatever. Go out and record stuff. Build sounds. Loop them. Create something new and interesting. It's a most wonderful thing. It is a most wonderful thing. And then sample the opera. Or sample something. Gather sounds and just... It's like a palette. And you will find that like that whole album concept is going to explode in your mind. You don't need more gear to do this. If you have a computer, you can do it just fine. There's so many like samplers, like soft samplers you can get. Whatever. So that's what I think, man. Have fun. Alright, somebody else. Ivan's bored. Come on, give me something exciting. Ivan! Talk to me.
I finally speak.
Ivan speaks.
Just yeah, I just got like this morning actually just watched a really good um documentary on industrial music on YouTube. It's like an hour long.
Is this the same one everyone's talking about?
It probably is. It goes all the way back to like the 1940s.
Is this the same one everybody's talking about?
Yeah, it's good.
You were actually
Probably.
here when we were talking about that.
Check the
Halfway.
links.
I'm halfway.
It's all right. Ivan, you are our Hunter S. Thompson, so it's okay.
Yeah, when but I mean, like throw some tin pans down a set of stairs and then use Ableton to pull the beat out of that. And then sample it and use those samples to recreate the sound, recreate the entire event mechanically. In the DAW. There's so many opportunities, and like just ignoring the rules of music as long as it sounds good. Who freaking cares?
If I may, the new album actually has a track called "Do the Spin" on it. It's actually been on the Patreon already, and it's the one where I had those 5-gallon plastic water bottles that you stick upside down in a. I stole them from somewhere, so because I stole them, they sound even better. And I threw them. I just dropped it down the stairs. And the great thing about it, the rhythm that it created, is that I would not have made that rhythm. It came up with something different. And because it's right, the first hit is the one. And it goes dum ba, ba ba, ba ba. Because when it hits some of the stairs, it goes way up in the fucking air. And then it hits down the bottom in the room down there. And because when it hits down there, you've got the reverb of that room. Because in the hallway, you've got the reverb of the stairwell. Then it goes down there. And it's just this tiny fucking thing that I was just getting all very fucking excited about. But yes, using other things to create rhythm as well is awesome. And if I'm going to give it, just cheat a tiny bit, like what Ivan said, is you might want to go through and knock some of the sounds. You might want to push them towards the 16th a bit. Because the really cool thing that's going to be happening, and you don't fuck with this, is that it's going to be playing on triplets. When you drop something down a pair of stairs, and it doesn't just go boom, 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 boom. It goes boom, 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 because it's bouncing all over the place. When you do this shit, you're going to create. There's going to be some really cool polyrhythms in there. Let them happen. If they work, let them happen. Don't force it, because that's part of the fun. It's going to be creating notes that aren't specific notes, that are strange harmonics, that are quarter tones or fucking whatever. That's part of the magic. You got to let that chaos in. That's actually my new song. Do you want to hear it? It goes like, let the chaos in. If anybody's got a lighter, you can light it up now. Let that chaos... Let the chaos in. Let the chaos in. Let the chaos in. Let the chaos in. And that's our industrial We Are the World. Thanks, guys. I knew I could count on you. Does anybody want to try and follow up on that?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I've been working lately with just taking random samples and then pulling the like letting Ableton just yank the percussion, convert to MIDI to just pull out the beats and then running with that, and fairly happy with the results so far. I find it also helps to there will be that going on, and then I will I'll nudge things around to quantize it a bit. And then usually I'll have another drum track that is like just a bit more traditional, so that it kind of pulls it all together and it makes it make a little bit more sense while still being pretty chaotic.
Thank you, man. I want to throw it to you, Alex. You just brought up a really interesting point, which I'll touch on in one moment. Alex, I want to hear your amazing voice.
No, I think you should continue after Ivan. I wanted to change the topic.
Okay. It's really interesting how industrial music is made by people who are control freaks. No offense, but people who make industrial music are control freaks. I'm talking to you. Don't look at it. I'm talking to you. You're a control freak. And what's interesting is that the thing about industrial music is it's chaos. There's an amount of chaos that needs, I think anyway, that needs to be in it. And the controlling part of your frontal lobe wants to stop that. It wants to make order from this thing. And it is a constant battle of chaos and order. You know, man, maybe that's what this is all about. It's that chaos and order. And you need to be having an attitude when you're writing, which is, I have no idea what I'm doing. What am I doing? I don't know. That when you start, because that's what exploration's all about. I'm just going. Kind of. Yeah, you got to not know what you're doing. We're going to stay on industrial music just for a moment, and then we're going to throw it to Alex once we've exhausted this topic in 30 years' time. Rezi, did you want to talk more about industrial music, or did you want to change the subject?
No, it's still pretty much on the same topic.
Keep your hand up, Alex. Go, Rezi.
Ivan, you just mentioned using, some of the tools to do the job, and I was wondering if anybody's yet employed any of the neural kind of AI style tools that are becoming rapidly available to generate these sounds or to originate these things. Because speaking of imposing your will on the machines in order that they might do your bidding, there's a whole new probably pretty useful set of plugins and online tools to generate specific things as events and samples and stuff like that. And it's just in the context of this guy I saw, Eclipse and Kasi, I think, has an album called Echoes, which he claims was all generated by language models, large music models. And I don't know. I'm not sure it was, or if he's a label plant, or if it's legit. It could be anything at this point. But there's something going on there right now that everybody's doing that I haven't really done much with.
That's amazing. I'm going to throw it to, think about that, and you're welcome to weave this into the topic. Ivan, go.
Okay, I've used AI to generate MIDI, and I've largely found it to be lacking. It's good at making stuff that sounds like, not like fun crap, but just crap. So there's that. But on the chaos thing, I mentioned it in the Discord yesterday. The Synthcussion SC1 plugin that I found, dirt freaking cheap. It's a SY1 knockoff, VST, and you put it in the right mode, and it brings the monsters. Yeah, and then you throw the right effects against it, and it really brings the monsters then, and it's kind of, for how dirt cheap it was and how simple it is, it's kind of just full of awesome.
Okay. You're welcome to put a link of that in here, and I'll share it with everybody. I think everybody on the Zoom right now is either us or Diana. Hi, Diana. We love you. I hope you're going. It's all right. Alex, if you want to throw in on this one, you're absolutely welcome to.
So, to Rezi's question, I really want to try to train my own neural network on some kind of audio and stuff, and then get wrong results on purpose. Because I think that's where it's most interesting. Because it will come up with textures and sounds that are like probably very glitchy. For example, especially if I don't have like the big data sets to make realistic speech synthesis. But that's not what I want. I want something that sounds fucking weird. And I really want to come to it. Unfortunately, I'm like bad at tackling such projects, but I hope I get around to it, because there's so much great potential for weirdness.
This is something we need to talk about, because you've brought this up a few times, that you have trouble creating sounds and letting go. I want to come back to this. I'm going to throw it to the Mr. Vince first.
Yeah, on the subject of AI for generating sounds, there's a voice AI that I found that I unfortunately can't afford, but it would be really cool if I could. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I think it's Synth AI is the name of it. But also, in terms of AI vocals, Grimes, the out there chick that had Elon Musk's kids, has apparently offered her vocals, her AI generated vocals, to everyone to use without copyright infringement, at least as of right now. I went and signed up to be able to do it through her website. You are technically allowed to use AI generated versions of her voice for whatever, as long as you go through her website to create it.
I think she walked it back with a, oh, but don't be weird about it. Don't do weird shit.
Well, I'm gonna do whatever I want with it, and she can decide if it's weird or not, I guess. But like, it's an AI generated voice. It's gonna be weird regardless, as far as I'm concerned. Like, that's a weird concept.
I think she meant like, don't make me say stuff I don't
stand by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to worry about there. I mean, if you want to
push
your boundaries with it, good luck with that. But like,
if you go in with good intentions, I think you're fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, cutting loose on sound design is really hard. I'm always going to bring up, firstly, fucking Forbidden Planet, which I just every now and then I watch Forbidden Planet, and also Clockwork Orange, specifically Switched on Bach. I keep listening to those two things, like Forbidden Planet and Switched on Bach, and I just go, I suck. Like, I fucking suck. Like, the level of weird, like, genuinely, and also Delia, but not so much, because she was more tape. You know, Bob and Barb, like, they would straight up create weird fucking sounds, which achieved an emotional response. That's what's brilliant about it. You know, it's funny, man. I could almost argue that the soundtrack to bloody Forbidden Planet hasn't been surpassed, because so many people who try and do something similar pull in musicality as specific non-musical tonality, which is the whole thing about Forbidden Planet, is its non-musical tonality. And I think it's this massive area of electronic music that we went down a little bit, and then something better came along, which was the Moog, arguably. It was, actually, I think. But then Wendy Carlos did this stuff with the Moog that you can still do on a Moog, but people don't. You know, and it's stuff like using a whole bunch of resonance, having a bass sound which are really, really high. One of the oscillators is like 3 octaves higher. Stuff like that. We don't do that anymore. Like, oh, I don't hear it. You know, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of stuff going on is very interesting, but when it comes to, I need to free my mind now, I need to free my mind, Forbidden Planet, watch, Alex, I'm giving you right now, you need to watch Forbidden Planet. You also need to watch Liquid Sky, because what they're doing with the sampler is just broken. It's fucking great. You need to listen to Hooked on Bach again, and if you haven't already, you need to buy a copy of Jaroszewski's Dune. The documentary about Jaroszewski, Johann, I'm going to say his name wrong and I forget, I apologize. Jaroszewski's fucking Dune. It is
on YouTube.
Is it free on YouTube? Free with ads?
At least when I watched.
Do me if someone can find the link to that, to a free with ads version, It is the most important documentary ever made for artists. Yarowaski is the Grand Master. He is the master of all. And what he covers in that documentary is so profoundly inspiring. Like it exists where Lynch exists. It's way up there. What's going on, Alex?
I found the one I watched, but it's in German.
Okay. Oh well. But Yarowaski's Dune. Buy a copy. And have it on your computer. Oh, thank you. Is that the German one? All right. So this is the German version. Boom. Go watch that. That. You know, it's all about thinking outside the box. There's no box. That's the great irony. And it's control and all of that sort of thing that says, oh, there's a box. Because if you go outside the box, ooh, you might get in trouble. There's no fucking box. Vince, is this it? Oh, what is this? Is that a synthesizer?
Synthesizer V. It's a vocal synthesizer that came out in 2020, I think.
Alright, cool.
Apparently it has a free trial. It's limited, but it's free.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm done speaking now. Alex, your hand is up and I went on a rant and I apologize. Floor is yours.
So first of all, I think the secret to making such soundtracks that are sort of amusical is to use test equipment or something similar that wasn't purpose built for music. Because I think that's, if you use like even like a buffer system, everything was built with music in mind. So it's like a funnel turning you into music land. But if you use test equipment or like something like similar like that, like I don't know, just self-assembled electronics, it's way harder to land there. So I think that's the secret if you want to go in this kind of alien atmosphere. And the other one was maybe that you already began it, but that we talk about sound design secrets. I don't know if Rezi wants to talk about something else first, but yeah, Mark brought it up before we started streaming, and it's something I sometimes struggle with and sometimes not, and I figure out it's like something that I lose, a skill that I lose if I don't use it, but I regain quicker than I did before, because it's like a sport. You have to build yourself up to run again until you can run the marathon. And the area of sound design I struggle most is with FM sounds, because I really like how they sound, but it's so hard to figure out the fine details, because sometimes it's like a fraction of a hertz that makes a sound from rubbish to beautiful or interesting. So yeah, I don't know if you just want to everyone wants to throw in their specific sound design tips or how we handle this, but I think it's a good topic.
Okay, thank you. My hand's up. I'm actually, Mark, your question, I just want to throw it back to your original question, which was the Thriller bass line. Wasn't it? How did you make the bass line to Thriller?
Yeah, sorry. Well, it was more tips and tricks, because I looked up a couple of videos about it, and like, although I was, as far like I'm using an emulation of an ARP 2600 and a mini Moog. Wait, did I use a? No, I had a memory Moog emulation. But anyway, so like I tried following along, but I just didn't have anywhere near the same sound, and I was trying to figure out what am I doing wrong, because I was following the ARP tutorial almost exactly, but it just wasn't there.
Interesting.
So I don't know, there's some other setting that I just wasn't aware of.
I don't know. I'm really bad at here, copy this sound. I'm really crap at it. Okay, here are some tricks that I have. If you want to get the Moog growl, which once again I'm crap at, I just can't I can't make the Voyager growl. And yet I can go through presets of that thing, and there are so many fucking presets of it's growling, it's farting now. I just can't do it. A trick I have learnt on the modular is you only need... In fact, the most hugest bass you've ever heard is one oscillator. One big fat oscillator. Boom. And a good oscillator, one oscillator, and this is like getting into sub territory, and a good filter. That's all you fucking need, because nothing is going to rock the boat like one oscillator. As soon as you put two together in the bass, and I'm talking like below 100, two oscillators they're going to start fighting with each other, and it's not a defined fart. It's not just because when you go, wow, what's really low? A tuba is one oscillator. A cello, that's one oscillator. That's one string. That's one reed. A timpani, that's one skin. One. If you've got something sitting on top of it, like another bass line, sure, put three oscillators in that one. But the trick I have learned is that the sub, so you've got an oscillator, then you might also be a sub oscillator. So that's kind of okay. But the trick is that you take that sub oscillator, and instead of like putting it through audio, you run it into another filter, so it's got this really sharp drop on it. That the shape of it has got a sharp drop, and you put that into the filter, so it is frequency modulating the open and close of the filter. So instead of the filter actually saying, "Oh, there's a sound, and I'm going to shape that sound," the oscillator is controlling the filter opening and closing. So you've got your tone here, but the filter is going to be opening and closing at half the rate of that tone. For example, if you're playing a sound at 100 cycles, that's where your tone is. The filter is opening and closing 50 times a second at 50 cycles. So that's going to be a sub thing. So they're always moving in parallel. Now, the really cool thing about this is you're tricking your ear and a whole bunch of other things, because your ear is going to hear and perceive that there is another tone below it. That there is a sub there. There's no sub there. It's just an oscillator. It's just a filter opening and closing, which is creating the perception of that thing being there. And if you have a controller that brings that level up and down, you start creating something real fucking meaty. That just goes. The filter is also being shaped with an envelope as well. So the amount that sub is opening and closing the filter might not be too much. It might only be 50%, for example. But I found that that's a really solid trick. And another fun thing to do is change the waveform going into there. Because if it's a sine wave that is modulating that filter, sounds very different to a square wave, sounds very different to a sawtooth, sounds very different to a triangle. If you want something really aggressive, it's all about those fucking, all about the sawtooths. Hold on. Ramp. All about that ramp. A thought. Alex, I see your hand.
I think something that's really important with analog style synthesizers, like real analogs and really close emulations, is that if you drive the level with which the oscillator goes into the filter, has a huge impact on how it sounds. That's something I didn't know at the beginning, and it made me. It's something that sort of perplexed me, because I didn't know why it sounded different, and it was because it's not linear. If you go hotter into the filter, it will sound different. Also, with the Minimoog, there's the trick many people use, that they use the output of the Minimoog, feed into the external input, and depending on the level, it can also have a huge impact on the general sound. It will sound more growly and more low and focused.
Can I just add something before I throw it to Rezi? Thank you. Another fun thing to do as well, is put the amplifier, because normally if you're using a modular, like synthesizers are, oscillator, mixer, filter, amplifier at the end. So the last thing to happen is the amplifier. If you want to do something fun, swap the two around at the end. So it goes into the amplifier first, so it's actually shaping it's amplifying, the volume is being shaped by a filter. Then that goes into so the volume is being shaped by an envelope. Then that goes into the filter. The trick with, and Alex, the trick you said about driving it into the filter is a great idea. I love it. The trick with driving shit into a filter is the more complex the sound going into that filter that you're driving, the better. So if there are several oscillators that are all out of tune a little bit and a sub, when you start compacting them together, that's going to be interesting. If one of them has reverb or just chorus on it, then it goes into the filter. That's going to be really interesting, because distortion likes to fuck with harmonics, and the more option for harmonics you give it, the more it's going to fuck with shit. The floor is yours, Razzie.
Were you consciously describing the intro sound for Tom Sawyer by Rush a minute ago, or was my bias just showing?
Really? I didn't know
You
that.
built it perfectly. You did to the long, filter modulated by decay to sustain 0 over time.
Wow, cool.
That's that sound. I mean, you got to play it in an octave to really get it, but yeah.
On a CS8.
Industrial.
Awesome. I love it.
Oberheim OBX8.
Okay. Well, hey, look, while you've got the mic, man, do you have tricks, Raz?
I don't spend too much time loading presets. Just start messing with the oscillators, finding out what they sound like, to open up the filters all the way, take the envelopes off, listen to the oscillators. If it's a wavetable synth, sweep through them, figure out where you're going. These are my steps. Okay, I like this one. Now I'm going to start listening to the filter. Do I want to add some resonance in? I've never used to, because resonance starts sounding tubby and kind of not as cool. But maybe it'll work out if we put a really fast filter, so it's now a chirp sweep kind of thing. We're getting some distortion weirdness. All right, now what can we modulate that with? How do the LFOs work? Are they rampy LFOs that come in, or are they instant LFOs that resync every time you hit the note? Start deciding on those things. And then okay, I've got kind of a sound. Does this even fit the purpose? Yes. Continue on. No. Put that aside because it's awesome anyway. I'm going to use it in a minute. But now all right, I am going to use it. What are the effects that are going to go on it? Does it enrich with chorus, or does it get too diffuse? Does the reverb need to be a long tail because we're going to be hitting it sparsely, or do I need a short room around it to really reinforce some of the length of the attack, and then leave it live forever so that you can go back and make tweaks, and then I guess at some point start seeing which things you're going to modulate over the course of the song to do a manual automation curves and stuff like that, or hit the mod wheel on them. That's kind of, if I have a formula, that's the way it goes.
I love it. Thank you, man. Alex, this conversation is blowing my mind, by the way.
Yeah, it's just some more bass synthesizer tricks. The first one is if you're using multiple oscillators and you have syncable oscillators, you can sync them to the gate, and then they will start at the same time, and it will give you a much more consistent beginning, so you don't have the problem that it sort of drifts out in punch, which is often a problem with analog synthesizers.
I'm dealing with that
another
right
one
now
is
in a song that's so appropriate.
Yeah, if
I
you
don't have a choice.
If you tune one synthesizer to your fundamental, one oscillator to your fundamental, and the other one to the fifth, psychoacoustically you will think there will be a fundamental under it, because you're simulating the first two overtones.
Huh.
You trick your brain into hearing a fundamental that doesn't exist. So you have a D fundamental, but that doesn't muddy up your mix because the frequency doesn't really exist. That's also a trick that many people use. And for Waldorf synthesizers in particular, the wavetables often don't have the most the best descriptions, because back then they stem from the PPG wave and they only had so much text to describe it. and you can look up what they actually do. There are like some people who have like collected every wavetable from the early Waldorf synthesizers and wrote down what the idea behind it is. Because sometimes they're called at harm, and you sit there and like hurt someone. What's it? And of course it's harmonics, but I've had stuff like that. I read the description and thought, oh my god, that's what that's for.
Dude, I didn't know that. Another fun... Okay, so also the whole idea of tuning it to a 1 and a 5, then distorting that's a great idea, because that distortion is going to fuck... Yeah, it's electric guitarville, and it's going to fuck with the harmonics. Even that fifth, not a fifth there, but a fifth an octave higher. And then also look at your harmonic overtone series as well, because you might put a third in there too, a major third, which is part of the overtone series, I think. Yeah, it is. Arguably. Another fun thing to do is, you know, when you talk about frequency modulating, you think of the oscillator. So you're going to drive something into the oscillator, and that's great. Keep that shit out of the bass, because it gets messy and terrifying. But when you start modulating, dude, we haven't even talked about sync yet. We never talk about sync. If you got a fucked oscillator, use it as a sync oscillator. It's great. And this is a great thing about the dark energy and so many other things, is that you can modulate not just the frequency of the oscillator, but you can also modulate the pitch, the pulse width. Because doing a pulse width modulation, even if it's a little amount, and you might put that a fifth higher, so that it's going to be playing a parallel fifth, you start creating really interesting harmonics to the sounds. Even if it's not tuned with the synthesizer and it's just something that's sitting in there, an LFO or something like a high frequency LFO or a low frequency LFO, you're creating something really interesting. Also remember amplitude modulation, because you're going to pull harmonics out of stuff using that as well. So you're actually opening and closing the amplifier at a certain rate, and you will hear that rate as a note. So if you're pumping an A440 in there, you'll hear the A440 because it's pulling a frequency no matter what the other notes are doing. Another fun thing is putting it on the filter. You're going to pull a different sound as well. If you have a wave shaper like the dope for A136 or the A137, drive that fucker in there. And a real fun thing to do is you get a maths or a dope for A155 sequencer. You get a sequencer. You set the sequences, the knobs at different areas, and you speed it up. And it will create a fucking tone. It will create a wave shape. Use that wave shape. And another great thing is granular synthesis. If you've got a sampler, even if it's a soft sampler, loop something that big. It's fucking awesome. And you might find a whole... And they're great on, you know, that's why they call them clouds. They're fantastic on pads and stuff. Because the... they create harmonics inside them are just absolutely beautiful. But it's great fun to set up a complex complex sound based on something like a sequence. And if you've got something like an A155 Dopefer, you can actually control that the rate, the speed of the sequencer with control voltage from your keyboard, so you can actually play it. It becomes a very interesting thing. I'm going to throw this to somebody else right now. 1, 2. I'm coming to help you now.
Well, the problem I have with frequency modulation, FM synthesis, is that it's sort of much in nuance, and usually the interfaces are so bad that it's hard to find that fine detail, because you have to switch so many pages. And that's why I really wish I had the OP6, because I've heard that's the best user interface for FM synthesizer until now.
Best ever. Like,
It's very nice.
Get the VST. You'll be in good shape.
Yeah, maybe. But then I could use just any other FM synthesizer and software, I think. And I already have one that I won in a, how's it called, in a raffle.
Well, I want to make the distinction and also go on record. I don't really like digital FM synth, like DX7. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of classics in there that, I mean, they're formative, some of the basses and stuff. But I mean, I could do without DX Rhodes for the rest of my life and be fine. But analog FM is great. Like, that's kind of where Carl was going with the modulating the filter at a audio frequency. But even getting that cross modulation going on your analog oscillators, it's a lot less stable in the analog world, and you don't get to do these, you know, really complicated operators intermodulating each other to make a pure bell that's consistent. But I haven't found much use for that kind of tone in my life and work. On the other hand, doing that really crazy 2 oscillators, one frequency modulating the other in an analog sense, where there's a tiny little bit of LFO on one of them, and you just get that really gritty, sometimes a little too juicy for my taste, but I find it really hard to describe, and I think that's one of the greatest things about it. But there's a certain sound and aggression and grit that you get from, I see Vince has an actual bell instead of a digital synth bell. That's the real deal. Making this particular sound, it's useful in basses, it's useful in percussive, you know, stab elements. But if you get a good, like, this particular growling, percussive, aggressive sounding, frequency modulated 2 oscillator analog sound, it's one of my favorite things, and I don't know how to describe it. It's one of those things that just really eludes me on much more than just talking about how I arrived at it. Does anybody else have experience with that?
Probably make that work pretty nicely with VCV rack.
I mean, I can any synth, any analog synth. I use it in my Pro One all the time. An actual physical piece of hardware synth where you can frequency modulate oscillator B to A, or A with B, to say it that way, as long as it's semi-modular or has a switch to do the modulate between oscillators. Doesn't matter if it's built on Curtis chips or if it's a, you know, virtual emulation. It'll do it. It's the operator digital FM synth that gets me feeling a little bit bad, and I think that might be a little bit of what Alex, you were talking about too. Please go.
No, I feel like especially the modern ones that sound really clean. I really like them. But you have to remember that digital FM and analog FM are sort of different beasts, because unless you have special through zero analog oscillators, you will have I don't know what it's called, but not through zero modulation. So you will have certain sidebands, and you have certain artifacts that you don't have in the digital FM. And also, digital FM is usually not really FM, but pulse with modulation, because it's easier to implement.
To the same effect as having it be frequency modulated? I don't see how those two things would cause the same effect to happen, though. If you're strictly modulating the pulse width of the square wave and actually modulating the frequency, and those are 2 oscillators acting on each other, how does pulse width affect a similar...
sorry, not pulse width, phase modulation. I'm sorry.
Well, even now you're outside of anything I'd even get. How does that go?
An engineer explained it in a video that in a live stream that I attended, and he said, like, basically you have a wavetable of a sine wave, and you modulate which position of the sine wave you're, like, calling from memory. And that's and because of some mathematics, it usually sounds like 99.9% equal to actual frequency modulation, and you don't have the problem with actual frequency modulation that you will have a drift in pitch.
And is that the engine? Does the DX7 engine operate in that manner?
Yes, it's strictly not an FM synthesizer.
That's fascinating. I never knew, because again, I'm dismissing digital FM as what the DX7 sounds like and being like, no, it's not my thing. So I might not have the experience. But the sideband intermodulation, I think, is the effect that I'm talking about, with the analog synths being exciting to my ear and somewhat chaotic and somewhat aggressive sounding. And it does create moving overtones in that way that I find useful and kind of unique, or at least a little bit, texturally different than just what a normal, you get a filter sweep on an analog couple of oscillators and it does one thing, but you get an actual either frequency modulating in the audio range, the filter position like Carl was talking about, or having the two oscillators intermodulate with each other in that way. So kind of cool. I missed what you guys just exchanged about which synth. Ivan, you just suggested something to Alex. Alex, you were finishing up and I was formulating a thought.
Korg has this really wonderful FM synthesizer called OP6. And in contrast to the DX7, which has like multiple buttons and just one data slider, it has like, I think, many sliders and also some rotary encoders.
All the encoders I could want.
And it's said to be the best user interface for an FM synthesizer to date, with the exception to the controller to the DX7, where every parameter has its own knob. But it's like really expensive.
That does look awesome, the OP6, and that is definitely the way that I would prefer to have it work, rather than a single parameter select and slider system of any sort, or even just selecting those topological, algorithm operators connected to other operators. That just never made sense to me over the years. But let me throw the OP6 thing in the link while we're at it. And then I just wanted to also mention a thing that I saw, the motor synth that uses the PWM drone engines as its tone wheel source and also as a magneto source. Hey, look. Wait, that's not the OP6. What is that one?
The OP6.
It. Okay, yeah. It's with the lights off, it looks a little bit different. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, now plug it in and play a tune. It's not show and tell if you can't hear it.
Get my setup to agree to actually play it.
I mean, we got like 15 minutes before we usually wrap this thing up. So if you happen to, I was wondering if anybody had saw the it's, I think it's going around to their promotional cycle now, but it's I think 8 PWM drone engines in a little box, and they have tone wheel markings on them, so you can do that optical pickup in the same way like an Hammond organ would. But it also has magnetic pickups to get the actual sound of the drone engines. And I guess drone engines being very light and low inertia, they're able to change speed almost instantaneously. But there is some control lag sounds and there is some noise distortion from their instabilities. And it makes an interesting kind of expensive and very noisy in the room situation. But did anybody have thoughts or chance to see anybody demoing that thing this week?
I only saw the first version, which was like they had like a couple of years ago. But I know probably the new one is better in many ways, but I haven't listened to it because I can't afford it anyway.
Super expensive. I think maybe this is a little bit gimmicky, but it does have a kind of unique sound, and it seems extremely deeply patchable, and also routings within its own parameters are just.
What are we talking about?
It's a little synthesizer called, I think, Motor Synth 2. Alex had mentioned the first version, and this is a revision that I've seen going around, which uses optical tone wheels printed on drone PWM controlled motors.
I think everybody at Super Booth this year saw it.
There it is. So that's right. Okay, it's post Super Booth season, so this is going to happen. Did perhaps a better application for using motors in a synth was, I don't know if this has come back up, but there's one that has motorized knob rotaries for every parameter. So when you hit recall, the positions of the knobs actually return.
Melbourne,
that seems like,
yeah, the Melbourne synth thing.
Oof, I would love something like that to be on
$4
everything.
grand.
I would hate for that to be on everything. Carl, welcome back. Do you want to take it from here?
I'd love to. Hey, man, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Sorry. Wife's got a show on, and I was helping her get ready for it. Okay, so, here we are. Alex, I can see your hand.
Sorry, if I click... Sometimes if I click on the button, it doesn't go back because I click like 1 pixel to the right or to the left.
That's okay. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up? I see Rezi's hand.
This would be a change of topic.
Sure.
I guess that was a prompt to do so. And I don't know, this might have to wait till next week, but there's a distributor called Verse One that I just became aware of. And they're in the category of no fee per release, take a slightly higher percentage, which is kind of cool. That's okay right now. They're in the category of you can't just release on them. You have to apply and give them all your info, which is, I mean, that's kind of cool if it means you're going to get more attention. They're also in the dubious category of kind of a lot of typos on their site and only 2 promo videos with influencer marketing things so far. Verse1.net, it looks promising, but I don't know if I trust it yet. Has anybody looked into it or maybe want to okay, just no, don't do it. Tell me something about it.
No. Okay, so I'm going to talk paranoia now. I think people have figured that if you want to really scam people, get their Bandcamp logins, get their royalty logins. I am so paranoid about everything now. I've got some really good fishies going on in the last month. Really good ones. Jesus, I fucking lost ANGELSPIT to one, I think. So I'm really fucking dubious about this. It sounds automatically it sounds dodgy. So fuck no. But then again, we're all about record labels, and can you get any more dodgy than a record label? Come on, really. Yeah, I say big no on that one. Like let them prove themselves in time. Like, you know, we've already got DistroKid, Orchard, AWOL, and a million others that have proven themselves to be law-abiding, fair things. Until this thing proves itself to be a law-abiding, fair thing, then no.
Your comment about them having logins and access to any accounts is that, yeah. Makes sense.
Bye. Nigga 12-0. Alex.
I wouldn't apply this to anything, but with stuff like this, I think it's like good to go under the mantra of no one ever got fired for buying IBM. If you know the other ones, that even if you get a slightly better deal, you know what you get with the other ones. The new one would be a total wild card, so I would maybe wait, and if it gets a bit established, maybe then you can think about it. But other than that, I would just stay away from it. I don't want to be the guinea pig.
Thanks, man. Vince.
Yeah, I'd say honestly almost anything that wants a percentage rather than a flat rate. I mean, if it has a flat rate option and a percentage option, that's one thing. But if like the only option they gave you is to take a percentage of your revenue, I would go with no on that regardless, because like the bigger you get, the more you're paying them. At least if you're paying a flat rate, you're not going to pay them more just because you started making more money.
Thank you for your point of view. This is
Do
good.
any of the distributors take 0% percentage? I don't even know. I thought
DistroKid.
DistroKid, yeah.
Fee only upfront, and it's annual for DistroKid, so there's a recurring fee, flat recurring.
There's a recurring fee, but it's the only recurring fee.
Yeah.
So.
They're also a publishing admin or an admin publishing administrator. So CD Baby and who's the other one? Well, DistroKid I think does it too now, but I'm not gonna give them my logins.
Yeah. Fuck them. Unless anybody else has anything else, I say we go to MTV TV. I'm going to show you where we are about to go because it's incredible. We're going to go to this amazing faraway place. Amazing faraway place. Called MTV TV. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, click on that link. But either way, what we're going to do right now is we're going to raid to MTV TV, and we're going to get some amazingness because there's always amazingness on MTV TV. And Diana, if you're there, you could also raid. But in the meantime, we're going to hang back here and talk about rock and roll and craziness. Bye, 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 bye.